Daar's 'n naam.
Ons kan nie daai selfie op daai selfie. Ons kan nie
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and hearty welcome to Leaders Angle. Our speaker this morning is Mr. Susman, currently non-executive chairman of the Woolworths Group and also chairman of the advisory board of the USB. He was born in Tel Aviv, spent his childhood in South Africa, left for London where he started his career at Marks and Spencer and later became the personal assistant to Lord Seif, the chairman. He returned to South Africa in 1982 to Woolworths, where he architected and built the Woolworths Food business. He held a number of top executive positions in the firm before becoming CEO in the year 2000. In 2003, he took over the chairmanship of the Woolies Australian subsidiary, Country Road. Both businesses are bywords for quality and for sustainability. Within Woolworths, he instigated and has driven a comprehensive program entitled the Good Business Journey. Through this program, Woolworths continually strives to do business in a way that is deeply sustainable, both socially and environmentally. The company has a strong sense of intrinsic values, which Simon instilled throughout the business over a number of years. Woolworths has received numerous awards for this and other programs. During his tenure as CEO, the share price rose from £2.60 to £26. He is, apart from being non-executive chairman of the Woolworths Group, he is chairman of Conservation International South Africa. He is chairman of sustainability of Chiba Free University. He's a member of Conservation International in Washington. Director of Trent Tata Retail in Mumbai, India, Director of Altron, and he is further trustee and chairman of a number of charities and other developmental bodies. He is eminently qualified to speak on the topic of values, and we look forward to listening to it. Son,
Always helps to be switched on. Thank you, Jan, and morning to all of those of you who braved the cold and wintry Cape Town morning. I'm going to talk about Woolies, and that's quite difficult because in and amongst the audience there are a whole bunch of Woolies people, so I have to not only talk about Woolies, I have to talk about the truth. They will interrupt me. What I'm not talking about is the business side of Woolies. So the business side of Woolies is about beautiful goods, beautiful stores, great service, and a wonderful product for our customers. Any good business needs to do that, whether it's a retail business, an engineering business, I suppose a mining business, things they're also beautiful. We certainly be asked to. But what I am going to talk about is the value system that drives what Woolies is, who Woolies is. And that's what I thought would give a better dimension than just talking about the mechanics of the beautiful goods and the beautiful stores and the beautiful people that work for us. All of those come out, but they're not the main topic of the discussion. Some of you have heard this presentation before. My apologies. But it was one of those Groucho Marx words. Oscar Wilde says it doesn't matter if he tells the truth. If it's worth telling, it's worth telling 2 or 3 times. I've told this 52 times. So, I titled it Building a Sustainable Value-Based Brand. That is what I wish to talk about. Here's my machine. I make this presentation in many parts of the world, so I tend to start off trying to make the gist. So the most beautiful city on earth, it doesn't look like that today.
Interesting point.
But I have to say that's something. And we have the most beautiful man in the world, and we have the most beautiful man in the world. We still honor and remember him and live in his shadow. And we held a World Cup for the most beautiful trophy in the world. The word I'm looking for, a championship contest for the most beautiful trophy in the world. Just to put some context to where I am in this presentation. This slide is the most unproduced slide in this country. And I fail regularly to understand why. Let me explain this slide. Very simple. Gray equals absolute poverty, LSM 1 to 5, it leaves us poverty. And the columns are 2001, 2005, 2010, are projected for 2020. That is an outstanding national success story. I don't read it, I don't hear it, I don't even hear cabinet and government talking about it. But that is what has happened to our nation in 15 years. It is why retail has benefited so enormously, and it's why other sectors of the industry have benefited so enormously. But it truly is the miracle of South Africa. And I think it's sad we don't hear it, but it is happening. Because out of this comes the next generation who are given a chance to grow and survive and build in the world. So I think that's a phenomenal slide. I put it up because I think it gives the context of where our country is. And I repeat, I don't hear it often enough. So, let me then move to Woolies. Who are we? What are we? Woolies, most of you are South African audience, you know Woolies, most of you shop Woolies, I hope most of you shop Woolies. The Woolies business itself is just under 30 billion in revenue. There are about 500 stores in South Africa, and Africa is about 45, 50 in Africa, the rest in South Africa. We did until, hopefully in 2 weeks' time, own 88% of Country Road. We'll own 100% of it. Country Road is about 6.5 billion rand of revenue. It's got 500, we say stores, outlets, because some of them are in departmental stores in Australia. Most of you, I hope, have seen Country Road stores in Woolies, all of the malls here. And it now comprises 4 brands: Woolies, Country Road, Trenery, a new brand called Witchery, which we bought here a couple of months ago, and Mimco. And we are in the process of completing the purchase of a departmental store chain called David Jones. David Jones is like a Studdiford's, bigger, more modern, more up to date, but we think we can add value to David Jones. And there's been a lot of talk in the press about David Jones. If anybody wants, I'll answer questions at the question time. So the group's got about 1,000 stores and a revenue of over 50 billion rand. It is now a big business. I think it was in the year 2000. 2000, that's 14 years ago, the Woolies opened his 100th store in our world. So things have changed. And for all of those, for all of you in business, that is how fast change happens. And I often say to people, look forward 10 years. Oh, that's a long time, son. I say, okay, look back 10 years. How long ago was that? No, it feels like yesterday. Think about it. 10 years' time. So we went from 100 stores 14 years ago to 1,000 stores in the blink of an eye. So, this is what we were. This is in the 50s, probably early 60s. Oh, bro. Quite a bale park. Yeah, this is a great city. It was, I think, a new town. We opened a brand new store in front of Bale Park. But all our stores looked a bit like this, and I have to say, as a teenager, I was sent to pack the shelves over Christmas, and I used to pack the food shelves at the back there, not in front of Bale Park, but in the Claremont store, with tasted rice. That was my responsibility. And it was really quite irritating because I would put the tasted rice on the counters and the customers would take it off. That's a bit of frustration of retail. For those of you who understand Woolies at the moment, it's very much a private label business. Most of our product is our own product, and we invest an enormous amount of technology, taste, passion into our private label. So if you look at this picture, again, look at the change. What is around the wall above the food market is Raadsal coffee, Prima, vleis op iets, and brands. So business has changed. What shouldn't change is the core value system of the business. That's what I'll be talking about later, and it didn't really change. So this is us today. Here's one of our more modern stores. This is the homeware section. This is the Country Road store. Just give you the context. This is, I think, Constantia, one of our more modern food markets. In fact, Constantia is the top selling food market in the country. Followed, and very closely followed, by a new store we've opened in Somerset West, which is an absolutely beautiful store. One a month ago, the award in, I think, Chicago was the most beautiful supermarket in the world. Hands down. So if you haven't been there, go there. There's great coffee there. And I'm very proud of it. Here's our flour. I put that in because I love the flowers. 60% of the cut flour market, but it always makes a beautiful picture. So, let me get to what I really want to get to. About 8 or 10 years ago, one of the directors on our board kept hammering me, saying, Simon, you don't talk enough about what the business is. And I said, but Brian, I do. We talk all the time about it. We talk in the meetings, we talk about it in the boardroom, talk about it in the stores. He said, yes, you talk about it philosophically, but you don't encapsulate what you stand for. So we started to question ourselves. And the more we questioned ourselves, the more we began to see that there was a set of words that we kept coming back to. And those words were actually values. So we put them on paper. And the thing that I found the most fascinating about this is how old and simple these words were. There's nothing complex about quality and style. We talk at Woolies, those of you part of the Woolies family understand this deeply. We talk about quality and style all the time. We talk about value for money, value for our customers all the time. We talk about service all the time. Service isn't just, how do you do, man, can I help you? Service is having the right goods at the right time in front of the customer. In today's world, that includes online. Everything shifts, but nothing changes. We talk about innovation constantly. And some of you were here on the USB program. We had an innovation day yesterday. That was good, yeah. We talk about integrity all the time. Energy and sustainability is what I'll do along a bit later. But these values came out of the normal conversations of the business. But the power of encapsulating them, writing them down, and including them in documents, including them in presentations, including them in the normal conversation with people on the shop floor, in the wine departments, or in the distribution centers is unbelievable. And they've been embraced here, and one of my successors has taken them on. This is what makes Woolies different. And when we look back and I listen, and I've been in one way or another involved in this business all my life, many of these words were talked about in the 1950s and the 1960s. They talked about, in fact, they used to talk about principles. Nowadays we talk about values. I'm not sure it's worth a debate which is which. But these things, qualities, value for money, innovation, integrity, service, etc., were talked about 40 and 50 years ago in this business. So they don't change. They are what we bring to Country Road. They are what we will bring to David Jones in Australia. Unbelievably powerful. So where did they lead us once we've done this? I've talked about that. They led us to thinking, is there a way of doing business that reflects those values deeply? And of course the whole concept of sustainability, which is that bottom value, came right to the fore here. So we said, okay, fine. You can do business, and this applies to any business, in a way that uses up, depletes, in some cases abuses the resources around us. And those resources can be the land, they can be your people, they can be the community, they can be your financial resources. So you can use what's around you, or you can set out to add value and add back to what's around you. And I think that lies at the heart of sustainability. So we talk about sustainability in the context of solar panels, we talk about sustainability in the context of water usage. All of that's correct. But if you stand right back and say, what is man doing? Man is abusing all the resources around us, like a whole 7 billion strong herd of lemmings. We are using the wood. We're using fossil fuels. We are using people in a way that's really abusing. Think differently. Start to shift your thinking, and you can add back. And I call it, you can operate either in a vicious circle, which uses up everything, or a virtuous circle. And it's a shift of thinking, and I think the biggest shift is consciousness. We're conscious about what we do. So, we then said, okay, fine, if we wish to do business in a way that adds value in a sustainable manner, let's measure ourselves on a set of targets. So each area of the business was challenged to set targets on all sorts of things: people development, community involvement, water usage, electricity usage, and it goes through the graphs. But everybody had a target on everything for a 1-year period and a 5-year period. Those targets still pertain today. So the business is scored against the sustainability targets. We initially set out 4 priorities for a good business journey. First was we had to look at ourselves as a community, our internal community, and we needed to transform. We live in South Africa, got a long history that we don't like, we have to own and accept, and we need to create an exciting future going forward for all our stakeholders. So first was accelerate transformation. Second was to look at the community around us. The transformation is internal. Look at the community around us. What more can we do for that community? How do we drive social development in South Africa? The third and the fourth are fairly similar. How do we use less resources and shift that into adding back to the resources around us, both from a broader environmental point of view and a climate point of view? So those became the 4 core priorities of our good business journey. I'll go through them one by one. Firstly, internal transformation. And I make the point here, those values drive our people. And I still am now the old Madala, and I walk into the stores in Johannesburg, the old people recognize me, not any one of the young people. Young people say, no, these guys are the old ones, hello Mr. Susman, hello Susman, hello Susman, how are the values, Susman? It's still there, in the stores, right out in the field, unbelievable. In the distribution center, they said to me once, what are these values? Simon, we want to tell you what we've done because we have some disabled people here who are deaf. So they defined the values in the sign language. Now this is not the same sign language that was used at the... I think it's a similar sign language. Not official. They said quality. Quality is like that. Value is like that. Service was like that. Innovation was like that. Integrity, they put their hands on their hearts. Energy, I can't know, that. Energy. And sustainability was look to the future. So there, that came out of, I don't know when it came out, but it came out of the distribution center in Johannesburg. No geniuses on strategy or corporate ethos. It came out of the blokes and the girls on the shop floor. It's very, very powerful. So, the values drive are 22,000 people. All of them equally are on some kind of incentive program. So, here's the business saying, we want to guide your behavior in a way that rewards you. So every member of staff, the whole of the organization, is on some kind of incentive program. Of course, we must be back. What's happened in the last 5 years is that we are now well over 50% middle and senior management on our back. This is a bit out of date. And of course, with the scorecards from the DTI, we're very aggressively procuring of black businesses, and we have some real success stories. These are not token businesses, we have real success stories, and the secret we found is that we get our existing supplier base to engage with their own people, either pass land across to them, or pass technology across to them, or pass skills across to them, and still remain engaged. Both parties seem to benefit enormously. So that really is working. On the social development side, much of Woolies' food is fresh. Much of Woolies' food has got a sell-by date on it, so that every night we take food off the shelves. That food we sell to our staff at half price, but they don't buy anything other than a small fraction. The rest we give away. And this year, that giveaway is 500 million rands. So now, when I say 500, everybody looks at it blankly, but it is true. We've calculated the figure again and again and again. And if you drive past a Woolies store, the backyard, at 10 o'clock in the morning, you will often see a truck or a bakkie loading trays of food into the back of the truck or the bakkie. We hope that that is out of shelf life, but good quality food, going to the local church or charity and not to some skullduggery. Our skullduggery figures are low. I'll come on to that later. So most of it goes to charities and is hugely well received, of course. We could, and we are often asked, why don't you? We could take much of that food and either discount it and sell it in the afternoon of the day before it goes out of shelf life. We could dice a lot of it up and sell it as salads or fruit salad or whatever it is, in mince, or we don't. There is some of that goes on, but that is for the freshest of the fresh. This stuff, which is wholesome food, goes out to charity. So what I find fascinating about this, Roger, you in the UK, in the UK, their sell-by date laws are so strict they're not allowed to do this. They either have to reprocess it, or they have to destroy it. It is crazy. This is wholesome food good quality food, and very well received by the community. We do all sorts of other things. If our staff have projects, we have matching funds, which we encourage them to do. We are very active in the school system, the education system. Anybody here got a My School card? Okay, nice. Everybody got a school card, madam? We ask you that at the till. The My School program has given 120 million rand to education over the last 5 years. So what is the My School program? The My School program is a little card, it's in your Woolies card, where you, as the customer, designate what institution. It started off in schools, but it's now broad into other NGOs. And you say, I want Woolworths to make a donation to my school. Who's the marketing director of that? Well, we worked out quite early on that the marketing director of that program is the headmaster. Because he calls in the parents and says, listen, this Woolworths scheme, you're going to take out of My School card. And I repeat, 120 million rand has gone into the school system. It is biased towards the privileged schools, because that's where our customer base is. But it isn't only for the privileged schools, it's for the underprivileged schools as well. But it's been a remarkable program, and we're very proud of it, and it's a tiny percentage of your transaction, but it adds up, and it adds up to a regular flow for the schools. We've got engaged with quite a lot of the curriculum, particularly around the things that are passionate to us: design, nutrition, water saving. We work with the Department of Education on that. We print out the syllabuses, curricula, and we distribute them to the schools. This is just a cool picture. We have another program, which is the EduPlant program, where with Food and Trees for Africa, which is a great NGO based in Johannesburg, we get into the schools and we teach the schools, the kids in the schools, to grow vegetables sustainably. There's varying degrees of success, from outright failure, as we operate in 2,400 stores, to really good production units that in some cases supply the local supermarket. So we sort of weren't sure about that, but then we were, but that's okay. So they literally supply the spark. They're happy, they learned, and they take this knowledge home to their folks and they say, Mom, Dad, come, this is how you do it. Fantastic. So, and then this one, which is lovely, is the Isikwama, which is where they produce the Woolies reusable bags. All done in South Africa, increasingly done with recycled polyester to be helpful. So, environment, we ended up with policies for things around the environment. We've got policies for badgers, the policies for dogs, the policies for frogs, cows, fish, etc., etc. I'll tell you a couple of the policies. So this is the honey badger, the rattle, the top. And he's a tough little guy. But the bee producers don't like the honey badger. He is a honey badger. Well, he likes honey. And not only does he like honey, he's got unbelievably strong claws. So the easiest way to get the honey is to break open the hive and get the honey. So he's happy, but the farmer's not happy. The farmers came up with a really sensitive solution to this, which is called the gin trap. And the gin trap is a metal trap that, if the honey badger treads on it, it clamps the honey badger's leg, causes indescribable pain, and these honey badgers are sort of biting their legs off to get away. Somebody pointed this out to us. We stopped all honey in the business overnight. Put it off display and said to the farming community, until you find another solution, we don't sell honey. Now here's such a simple answer. One of the farmers phoned up and said, listen, I've had this problem for years. I put my beehives on a pole. The bees can fly up to the height of the pole, and the honey badger can't, so I don't have any gin traps.
Okay.
So all Woolworths honey is produced on poles. So when you set out to live to your values, there will be a solution. You just have to be brave enough to stick to it. The policies on dogs were some experiments we've been doing because in the sheep farming industry in South Africa, there is a real problem on predation from wildlife, leopards, caribou and so on, killing off the sheep, and understanding the farmers are angry by that. They use gin traps, they use poison, they use anything that is indiscriminate, violent, and destructive of the environment, of the ecosystem, to protect their animals. So on the one hand, you have to understand that, on the other hand, it just doesn't make sense. So we tried a number of experiments. One of the more successful ones is this particular dog. He's called an Andalusian sheepdog or something. He's an enormous thing that from a puppy they put in with the flock of sheep. And he has a bit of an identity crisis, and he actually thinks he's a sheep. But he thinks he is a big brave sheep. So when the jackal or the leopard or the caribou come for the sheep, his presence protects the herd. So again, and this came out of the farming community, there are ways of doing things differently. You just have to accept it. Not all of them work all the time. You've just got to keep finding a different concept. The frog policy was about the distribution center in Johannesburg, where we had to put, we were building it, there was a pond that had a rare frog in it. So of course we had to move the frog, remove the pond, and the frog was relocated to the new pond, and we could build a distribution center. It wasn't the real story I wanted to tell you about frogs. The frog story is a lovely one. We get a phone call from Cape Town in our head office from the customer complaints department from a customer in Cape Town in the middle of winter. Says, I have just found a frog in my lettuce. Now you actually don't want that, because now you can imagine the headline, Woolworths has frogs in its lettuce, don't buy the lettuce. So it was like a flurry of apologies, and what can you do, and how many lettuces would you like, madam? I said, no. Where does this lettuce come from? Another flurry of people worried about their jobs. And they came back and they said, no, it comes from Mpumalanga, and from farm XYZ. She says, fine, the frog's still alive, come and collect it and send it back to Mpumalanga. So we did. We got John McLaughlin, those in the head office, went to collect the frog, put it in a box from wherever she was, Kansas or Vermont or somewhere, got on a plane, flew to Joburg, hired a car, and somewhere is a photograph of Tom releasing this rather bemused frog. Back into the lettuce field and another lettuce. But the customer's happy, so the point about it is not just it's a nice story, it's her expectation of what we should be doing. She said, it's okay, I know you're going to get a dog frog in your lettuce. I didn't know that. She just wanted it done properly. There are other stories around cows and fish. The cows sleep on blankets. I can't remember the fish stories, but they're lovely stories and they're lovely policies like that. Here's one that didn't work, but it was an attempt to make something happen. We set out to produce a recycled package. So the uppers were from plastic crates, ground down and made into fiber. The laces were from bottles, PET bottles, this kind of stuff. The units only came from natural rubber that used as much recycled as we could, etc., etc. We did all of this, the eyelets, the nickel eyelets. We have a no nickel policy because nickel can harm your skin. So the eyelets were recycled from cans and so on. Anyway, it was a great idea. Made up of tins and aircraft parts. I'm not sure how relevant that is in the last few years. The product it doesn't matter. It's yet another attempt to say, can you do things differently? So some things work, Some things don't work, never stop trying. This works. This is Flip Nell. Flip is the most wonderful guy. Flip farms on the Limpopo River, right on the Limpopo. And I'll tell the story. This is about a program we call Farming for the Future, but I'll tell a brief story about Flip. In the 80s, when there was not just tension between us and Zimbabwe, there was rocket attacks and there was people coming across the borders, both sides, causing trouble and doing military damage to each other. Flip was farming on the Limpopo, right? He took his water out of the Limpopo, and there were regular rockets coming across. Like we see in Gaza, issue with Israel at the moment. There were regular rockets coming across from Zimbabwe, hitting the farms. Flip was never attacked. I was asked to go up and meet him. Went up there, and there were 3 farms we were meeting with. We go to the first farm, man called Mr. Fisher. Remember it. And we drive up his driveway, and the first thing I see is a rack, 3 racks, with python skins, enormous python skins, strung up on the racks. Now I'm already tense. Why is he killing these pythons? What's he trying to prove? And of course, it's on the Limpopo, you get pythons on the Limpopo. We go in, and I meet this guy, and we have quality problems with him for some time, so we're looking. He says, I'll show you around, and he takes us first to his pack shed where he packs the vegetables that he's selling to us. And there's one of his farm workers there breastfeeding her baby. So he looks at her and he starts to shout at us. Basically, I've got the big boss of Woolworths here, take my pockets, take what the hell do this for? And he was really abusive. Then I've got the python skins and this human abuse. So I thought, okay, that's enough. So I said, okay, Mr. Fisher, can we go back to your house, please? He said, I haven't shown you the fields yet. I said, yes, no, no. I back to his house, I said, as of this moment, your account is closed. He said, you can't do that. I said, I've just done it. I've had quality problems with you for years. I don't like your human relations. And I didn't mention the pythons. He closed the account. Within 3 weeks, he was rocket attacked on 3 separate occasions. Gave up farming and left. We go to the next door farm, and here's Flip Nell, who was a retired, well, he's not a retired, he was an ex-Dutcher from Germany. I meet Flip. Flip's first comment to me is, I want you to meet my farm manager. I said, great. And he introduces me to the first ever black farm manager in the Limpopo area. And he tells me this guy's story, how he brought him up from childhood, how he's developing, how he's giving back to the community. So that's this man, Flip, in all those years. And some of the visits we had to go there in a rattle because of the mines and the rockets and so on. Flip never had an attack on his farm. But his values were known throughout that area. So he, the wrong word, protected himself in his values. It's not that. Flip lives to this day to his values. So where I'm now getting to is nothing to do with that. He and a number of the other farmers got together. What is happening is in producing the veggies for us, they were finding that their soil needed more and more fertilizer, more and more pesticide. They were depleting the soil. And one of them said, I've been doing some experiments. I've been putting old-fashioned compost back into my land. This is for commercial vegetable production. Old-fashioned compost back into the land. And my yields are going up. So we started a program of adding back to the land. And it's been the most remarkable program. We call it Farming for the Future. Soil conditions are improving. There are more bugs in the land. There are more worms in the land. We're able to rotate crops faster than we used to rotate crops. The carbon from the compost holds water, holds carbon. The most incredible thing, and these guys are saying that this is how my grandfather used to farm. So there's been this 50-year period of depletion, of using up the resources. Change now is what we call farming for the future, where they go back to the soil and recreate the soil. One of the farmers said to me, he said, I couldn't understand it. Every time we went into virgin lands, they would clear bush, they got huge yields. And he said, I worked it out. I'm using up 1,000 years of goodness in the soil. I need to put it back. And one of the key drivers in his compost program was going out into the virgin land and picking up the bog rock and putting it in his compost. Because in the bog rock is a fungus that really drives whatever it is, nutrification of the soil. So how can it be that the most modern farming technique benefits from the most ancient farming technique? But these farms are adding back and it's working. There's a whole lot of other stories like that. Many of our farmers are unbelievably passionate about these things. They all do things differently. But equally on the clothing side, this is a factory that we use in Madagascar. There's a big deforestation issue in Madagascar. They're planting their own forests to drive their own energy creation. They're using their own water. This is in Bangladesh, as we supply. Specifically designed a roof to capture water because of their water use, etc., etc., etc. So it isn't just flip on the borders of the Limpopo, it's Madagascar, it's Bangladesh, everywhere around the world that we source. We've seen our reusable bags. All our trolleys and shopping baskets are recycled plastic. We have a target of 10% of our waste going to landfill. That's 90% we recycle, and I think we're on that target this year. On the climate side, lots of work. We now are not using the worst of the global warming, because there are greenhouse gases in our refrigeration. We use CO2. Very different technology, but interesting enough, CO2, which is the big enemy, is actually a smaller and lesser of an enemy than some of the other gases that industry uses. The one that I do like is our head office. Somebody came to us in head office about 6 years ago, got a big fancy building in Cape Town, and said, why does every bathroom have hot water? Why do we need to wash our hands in hot water? We turned off the hot water in head office. This is 6 years ago now. 6 years ago, we saved 40,000 rand a month. I don't know what that would be today. And the cyclists who came in the morning were upset because they couldn't have a shower. We put a geyser in for the cyclists. I think that cost 200 rand a month. They're happy. And those boilers, I went down to see the boilers, which I've never seen. We had 3 enormous boilers on our museum pieces, saving 40,000, because you don't actually need to wash your hands in hot water. It's that kind of little thing again that comes out of the system of somebody thinking differently because they believe in the values, believe in a different way of doing business. Others, there's a truck that's cool by nature, just like the picture. So, our values drove this different thinking of good business journey. These are the values that have shifted how we do business. And I really think, I've only given you some examples, that we are doing business in a way that is different. And we are doing business in a way that adds back as much as we possibly can. But people challenge us and say, well, that's fine, that's all green, that's all goody-goody, what does it actually deliver? So here are our stats. We do well. We're gaining share of market. The business is growing. You see that we're strong. I don't need to go through the numbers. But you can do business well. You can do well for your staff. So we've got, I told you, 22,000 employees, 100% of them are incentivized. 10,000 of them are shareholders in the business. We have one of the lowest shrinkage, that's theft. I talked about that before. Whereas, figures worldwide, one of the lowest figures. Unheard of. It's way less than 0.7. Our labor turnover is one of the industry lows, and we have less than 12% union membership. And it's they're free to join the union. Join it tomorrow. So our staff get value. This is Latandu. He makes an unbelievable coffee. But we moved him to head office. So if you come to our building downstairs in Latandu, you get a great coffee. You've got to pay. It's one of the great, I think it's 26 rand for beautiful coffee. For the other stakeholders, we have twice in the last 3 years been nominated, not nominated, we have been told we are SA's most trusted brand. So the business is good, grows, does well. We are the most trusted brand in South Africa. 2 years out of the last 3. Internationally, in 2008, 2010, 2013, we were appointed. The International Responsible Retailer of the Year. That's voted by the peers of the World Retail Congress, etc., etc. So these are some of the things we've done. And the shareholders then used to say to us, yeah. So what? Well, here's the so what. In 14 years, from 260 to 80 rand, and since the GFC, global financial crisis, 6 years ago, from 8 rand to 80 rand. So you can do business in a way that adds back as much as you possibly can to the world around you. And you can do well for your staff, for your customers, for your shareholders, and for the community around you. That's it. This is Eileen say, I don't know, Blommetjie. So she was clear on school. She always says, I'm the number 1. She's the biggest flower seller in our chain. She really lives our values. We believe we can give deep value from our values, but the last 3 words, the journey never ends. That's what I have to say. I'm happy to take questions.
Could you share some of your staff incentive programs?
The staff incentive programs are all designed according to what we want the staff to do. So at a high level, I start with the chief executive. I sat with him 2 days ago. He has a set of goals. Do this with a profit, do this with people development, do this on sustainability, etc., etc. And at the end of the year, I and the board assess his performance against that. So he's got very high level goals. If you come to the sales floor, there are simpler goals, and they vary from year to year. They vary from what we are focusing on from year to year. Normally, they contain a measure of shrinkage. So if your store losses, shrinkage, that's either theft or administrative losses, are above a certain level, there's no incentive. If they're below a certain level, you qualify for an incentive. And then the store's profit, which will cover turnover and sales. So they tend to be simple. In the distribution center, they would be more around how many trays can you handle in an hour? Does your team handle in an hour? So they're all tailored to the performance that we require of that particular member of staff. And they vary in size. The chief executive with public knowledge, his on-target bonus is 70% of his salary. A staff member on the sales floor maybe 5 or 7%. So it varies where it is in the organization. We didn't have staff incentive schemes. And many businesses don't have incentive schemes at lower levels. And especially in a heavily unionized environment, it's quite difficult to put them in. The union doesn't like that kind of process. In our environment, the staff welcome it and really work for those incentives. Really work for it.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation and tell us all the wonderful things happening at Woolworths. Just going back on a macro scale to the very first slide that you showed on the LSM figures, it showed tremendous improvement, but why is that not reflected in the GDP per capita of the country? There's been hardly any improvements in that period. So that's one of the problems I've got here. And the other thing is, sort of Gini coefficient here, there's such a big difference between the wealthy and people that don't have resources. What is the reason for that? And what is Woolworths doing also to cut the gap between the highest paid and the lowest paid?
Okay. So these are some very sensitive questions. So the GDP per capita, I'm not commenting on. Those figures are factual. We haven't tested from 4 to 5 different sources. So that says there is a marked reduction, LSM 1 to 4 in particular, and a marked growth, LSM 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That is fact in South Africa. Some of that is driven by grant money at the lower end, but it isn't all driven by grant money. It isn't all driven by grant. There is a shift away from abject poverty in this country. Some of it is around better housing the government is providing. Some of it is around electricity connectivity, that pushes up away from abject poverty. Some is around water connection, those kinds of mechanical stuff. But they are all massively relevant to that end of the market. So I can't comment on GDP per capita. I don't have the figures to hand. Those figures are correct. And if you look at even the guys trading at that end of the market, ShopRite, you look at ShopRite's last 10 years of track record, it's outstanding. They are picking up the benefit of the lower end of the market. We and a few others are picking up the benefit of the higher end of the market. The second part of the question is the Gini coefficient. South Africa has one of the widest gaps in the Gini coefficient between the wealthy and the unwealthy. I have a very simple view about that. Focus not on the gap. I don't think the gap's the issue. Focus on the bottom. And the biggest single issue about the bottom is that most of the people still stuck in that LSM 1 to 4 will not get employed. My stance here is very clear. I believe our labor legislation prevents millions of jobs from taking place. There is not a small business person in this country who does anything other than desperately not employ people. Desperately not employ people. It is crazy, the labor legislation we have here. So if we could swing that, and you'll see in my annual report, I want the government to do one thing. Change the Department of Labor to the Department of Employment. Let's see what shift we get out of that. And let's get people, even if you said only in the rural areas, it doesn't matter. The unions are very strong in the urban areas. Only in the rural areas. Back to work, not back to work, into work, at low salaries. It gives them the dignity of work. It gives them the chance to better themselves. And most importantly, it gives their children a hope to better what their parents have. So I have a passion about the bottom. You're not going to stop Bill Gates or Christo Visa or Patrice Motsepe being wealthy. You shouldn't. You should welcome them. But what you've got to stop is keeping the bottom out of work. It's madness. So I have a passion, reserve my passion. Next question. Back there.
Using farming for the future as an example, have you got a program of developing your supplies?
We work, the Farming for the Future is a joint program between us and our suppliers. Much of the original thinking came from them, not from us. We are constantly refining again the scorecards on that. And it really is working and is driven by ourselves and by our farmers. We have an audit process. Once we agree what the parameters are, there's an audit process, and it works. We're excited about this program. I think we've got 85 or 90% of all our produce now in farming for the future, and we're moving that into fishing for the future, and some of the other industries that aren't pure agriculture. We'll be saying, how do we develop our fish resources, manage our fish resources in a more sustainable way. So it's got legs into the future. Even, we haven't got an answer for it yet, in things like cotton production. We did try a few years ago with an organic cotton farm, just didn't work. And there's a difference between farming for the future and organic. Organic has, I'm afraid, limitations. But farming for the future, we don't think there's any limitations.
What I'm actually asking is, have you got a program where you help to develop farmers, or you help to develop suppliers, manufacturing, possibly with direct investment or grant funding, or
Talk about small farmers.
whatever? Somebody that is aligned with your values and is sustainable and is making a big difference and is going to take a lot of innovation.
So we tend to work with existing suppliers and develop them. That's our first port of call. They need to meet our standards, we need to meet their standards. The big thing we bring to them is the market, and the big thing they bring to us is advanced, beautiful product. Our help is in working together. We do not own any production. We do not invest in our farms. We do, however, for emerging farmers, have a grant and a loan process for emerging farmers. As I said earlier on, we're finding that a standalone emerging farmer is not as successful on our statistics as those that work with an existing farmer who helps as well as us helping develop it. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we do not invest in general in our production facilities other than intellectual property. No more questions? One more.
Yeah. I'm quite interested in the David Jones business.
Yeah.
And in particular, how do you plan on instilling the roots values into a new environment?
Okay. So that's my next week employee. David Jones is, I think, 40 stores. The biggest ones are enormous. I think 20,000 meter stores, they're huge. The big ones, and the smaller ones are the size of about 2,000 meter stores. It is a 169-year-old business. 169 years. It's founded by Mr. David Jones, a Welshman, with a name like that, he's have to be a Welshman. He's a Welshman, and it's a great business. It's a house of brands, so it's like the Studdifans, and it's on a bigger scale. And particularly those flagship stores are magnificent. They've got glass ceilings, beautiful food market, huge cosmetics halls, and so on and so forth. Its turnover is about 1.6, 1.7 billion Australian dollars. It's 17, 18 billion rand. It's a big business. We've been through this quite extended negotiation about buying their shares, about minority shareholder in Country Road, a clever guy. And they all refer to him as troublemaker, but he's actually just a clever guy. And he's played us extremely well and cleverly over 17 years, and it is not as tense and as animosity-less as you read in the newspaper, but it has been challenging. When we bought Country Road, 87% of Country Road 15 years ago, we were just excited about having bought a business in Australia. And Country Road was a beautiful business. Is a beautiful business, was a beautiful business. And it's a beautiful business because it makes beautiful product in a beautiful way. So it really did echo what all this was. When I became chief executive in 2000, we had some issues in Woolies. It was a tough time. We just been through a recession of 1998, 1999 was a recession period. So there was a lot of work to do. I didn't really focus on anything other than Woolies. Then, within a year or two, the economy started to get better, Woolies started to settle down, and I started to go to Australia and get involved there. And what I was clear is that you can't sit in one country and micromanage the business in another country. And there was a lot of challenge from the board of directors to say, why are we even investing in Australia? Every South African business fails in Australia. But Country Road was good. That to me was a good reason to invest. And I always felt if there's something magic, you can make something happen. And Country Road is. But what became clear to me is that whilst I couldn't say to Ian Moyer, who was then the chief executive in Australia, Ian's not buying enough grey, I need a skirt length shorter, or whatever it is, so that would have been a catastrophe. What was clearer and clearer to me was that I could say, this is how you should be doing business. This is the kind of role you need to play in the marketplace. And if he was any good, he would do the skirt length and the color and the design and the team. And that started to dovetail in with all this work we were doing on values and equity. So they came together. So Country Road reflects today in the Australian marketplace and in South Africa the same kind of value system that we use. So when Ian and I were discussing the David Jones deal over the last 6 months, 9 months, that's been at the heart of the discussion. So I started this presentation by saying I'm not talking about beautiful goods, beautiful stores, beautiful service. All of that you have to do, and you have to do better than anybody else in the most, that Australian market is unbelievably competitive. But there is something else that you have to add in, and that is this value system. And it's the thing why when people talk about Woolies, their voice drops a bit. It's not Woolies. It's Woolies and they cross with us. But their voice drops a bit. When they talk about Country Road, their voice drops. When they talk about David Jones in Australia today, their voice drops. It is a loved, iconic brand. We have to add our values into that. And Ian will develop programs that is moving people into positions that affect that. So, yes, he's got a job to do to run the business and build it, get the mechanics right, and he's got a job to do to strengthen. It's not that it doesn't have the value system within David Jones, and why we were excited about it is we knew that we could do that. So we didn't go and buy Australia's biggest discount. We bought Australia's most iconic environmental store chain. We can do it. If we don't do it, there'll be something missing and it won't be as successful. And if we don't do the mechanics, it won't succeed either. So it's a fascinating challenge. That's what we stand for. Okay. Leader, you're moving on.
So we've got to the end of this morning's leadership angle, and it was just an amazing experience. I remember this show's, it was rather quickly time ago. 25 years ago, I sat here in the middle. Many case studies, but to experience a case study like this morning, it's just an amazing learning experience. And I'm going to go out and buy more Woolly shares. As you've shown to us, that it's not about the bottom line, it's not about the triple bottom. It is about the sustainability of creating sustainability through other ways. And many years from now, we will look back and still think about the story that you told us. And I've taken many lessons from this morning. So we've got something small for you, Simon, and I really want to thank you. Don't forget to tweet about spring and use the hashtag UCLA in your tweets.